Welcome back to Equal Time Soccer. I'm Mark Pavratsky. I'm here at the Black Heart, about to bartend for about 10 hours. Before that, had to do a little Aurora content with Matt, and he went on the train with Rochelle to Milwaukee. How was the train ride, bud?
It was nice. If anyone wants to get super deep into train vibes, the seats have been replaced since we took our trips pre-COVID. So new chairs in these Amtrak trains.
Sure. Good on you. Get those points. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the last game. RKC Third Coast started quickly. They took a hit out on Aurora, and Aurora took a little bit to respond. Eventually, obviously, they got a bunch of goals. But what do you think the team got out of that slice of adversity of actually just going down early in the first half?
Yeah, you saw Coach Lukic in the post game just speak to the fact that they really sort of weren't sticking to the game plan. It was the first time I think she directly spoke to that kind of disorganization or sort of lack of mental focus. I think you have seen now where Aurora has switched back to sort of that 4-2-3-1. I don't know if that's for either player comfort or just to simplify the roles or just to make sure that they're more ironclad in the back. So to me, I still think, we continue to say this and maybe it sounds really silly to people. I think it is a silver lining to have moments like that where they go down and have to battle back, because even if you score 8 goals in a game, if you start off down and you have to make adjustments in game, that's still, I think, good mental reps for the players and for the team as a whole, because they have to sort of figure out, hey, how are we going to dig out of this? Even if they have confidence that they are going to dig out, like Tiana Harris said post-game, there was never a doubt in her mind or in players' minds, but still having to actually do it carries some benefit. Although I'm sure the team would like to get back on the clean sheet again. 4 of their last 5 games have given up a goal now.
It's 8-1, right? So we'll talk about there's goals and people scoring as usual, but it was kind of a tough goal to give up. So Porba seems to be the number one now. She really is getting the bulk of the minutes. You'd assume when tough games come, that would be in there. But she's faced almost 0 shots from run of play. And so this was a unique moment. And she kind of just, from how much I can critique a keeper, she just was on her line a bit and didn't cover the one-on-one so well. But again, even for her, maybe that's a positive. But it has to be so difficult for the keeper and even defenders to prepare for what the big moments will be in playoffs when you face so few in the regular season.
Yeah, I think we haven't talked about that a ton specifically with Porba, just because you don't get those reps. And so for her, it's like, I don't think it's not that typical to talk about how hard it is to be a keeper on a good team, but It really does mean you have a lot of time between saves, a lot of time between those breakaways. There aren't that many breakaways that teams get on Aurora. And so because, Kafusi's speed, Harris's, tactical ability, Addie Simmons shuts off a lot of that stuff. So it was just a blunder. It was just a mistake. It's the same way a lot of the goals Aurora has given up were just either a mental lapse by one to several, defensive players. And I do think, credit to Porba having to go through these games where you have these gigantic gaps in, times where you're asked to make a difficult decision, make an instant, do I charge forward? Do I drop? Do I change my positioning? And so it is really tough, but I think it is important that, she get challenged now, because other teams in the playoffs are going to get breakaways. They're going to get set pieces. They're going to get goal chances.
It's going to have the ball more. Aurora just has the ball a lot, and they won't always with those other not. And then that kind of goes into center back a little bit. I think early in the year, we were seeing 2 new players, T. Harris and Kennedy Faulkner. Faulkner looked good. She has a stature about her. She's smart. She can also play the ball. She's been out seemingly with a knock. She hasn't even been the 18, so I don't know that it's been publicly said, but she must be, a little bit injured. Kaufusi seemingly kind of taking her place back and stepping right in. Like we said, not always the most challenges, but both Kaufusi and T. Harris have found their place, and they play a big role in distributing the offense too. I don't know how. I would expect it'll be very tight to see who will play when Faulkner comes back.
I think theoretically, maybe that's when you'd see Lukic try that 3-2-4-1 again, or that what she says 3-6-1, because then you could have Faulkner, Harris, and Kafusi all back there, and you could shift. You could shift Langdock out to that right mid where she's done a little bit of work, or even the Eli Rapps of the world, the Abby Ostroms of the world. I think Ostrom, we don't talk as much about her ability to get forward because Langdock is such an obvious, bomb down the wing outside back. But the truth is Ostrom served in that free kick assist. She takes the ball at her feet. She can get downfield too. So I wouldn't be surprised if Faulkner comes back, if you see that 3-back attempted and Ostrom and Langdock actually move up to those outside mids in that sort of 3-6 setup, just because, like you said, Faulkner, when she was playing, was so good. And it's going to be easy for people to forget that because Harris and Kafusi have been so good since. But if Faulkner is back come playoff time, it's so hard to imagine her not on the field. She's just so good. She had those long balls she served in. Harris can serve that long ball. Kafusi can serve that long ball. The three of them are just, they have to be three of the best center backs in the league. I mean, it's so hard to believe anyone has people, markedly better than those three. They're just so good.
Yeah, and it's also needing Faulkner in there to get a little bit more out of free kicks. That's one of the things in offense that Aurora maybe lacks is you'll see games with 10 corners, 15 corners and dead balls. And sometimes they'll find a play in the follow-up of it, which is part of a dead ball opportunity. But you do not see a lot of corners to head, or things like that, dead ball situation. So Faulkner is someone who theoretically could help with that. Offensive output, balanced as it usually is last game. And I don't know if we missed, maybe there's one missing, or I missed it from the W League website, but a goal for Langdock, goal for French, 2 for Adler, 1 for Del Moro, 1 for Hansen, 1 for Wykers. And then shout out, because it's one of the few stats we get aside from goals from the W League, Brendan Mulaney. We don't get enough yellow cards from this team. There's too much passing, too much moving. No one ever sticks in and actually makes a statement. So Brendan, I don't remember it, but good job getting the yellow, because look, we got to see what stats we can. But yeah, it's such a balanced attack still. And you see Wykers and Langdock, all the people who play deep still getting goals as well. So it just comes from everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Adler, Cat Rapp, Maya Hansen, Wykers, Langdock. I mean, some of these players are just absurdly productive. I mean, it was, I think, probably the first player I used that phrase with was, there was a season Maya Hansen was all region and she had 14 goals and 7 assists, for South Dakota State in the Summit League. And the only way I could think to describe her to people is just she's just absurdly productive. I mean, that level of offensive production is just, it's kooky. And obviously they're putting up a lot of goals, but it's just, if you're someone who hasn't watched this team yet and you watch a game, a player like Cat Rapp or a player like Hannah Adler, you watch them and their game is so obvious. It just jumps out to you. They're always in the right place. They're so good on the ball. They move so well off the ball. They can, they can dribble, they can pass, they can shoot. I mean, they're the equivalent of these 5-tool, prospects and players, where it's just talk about the jump Cat Rapp made from last year to this year. Last year, she was good. She was productive. And this year, I mean, she's truly one of the best players on the team, and she's a college sophomore. I mean, she's so good. I mean, that's the type of player.
They got to get Rami in at right wing, man. I'm on the Rami. Get Rami a start. And also, that's. I mean, they did rotate. Eli got a start for Langdock last week, which was, I don't know if that was extended rest just a little bit, because Langdock's going to play a lot of games, and it was a game they assumed to win. And so I'm assuming they just maybe coaches wanting to give Ken's a little bit of a break.
I think there has been a little bit of that, where game by game you see someone getting a full game off, and that's why they're not even in the 18. I think this last one, Langdock came off the bench. But the game before that, for those who are Instagram hawks and social media hawks, I think there was a former Gopher who got married, and Ari Del Moral and Ken Langdock were both away at that wedding. So I think I only noticed that after the fact, but I think for longtime Equal Time fans, longtime Gopher fans, I think if I'm remembering right, I think Selena Numerdor got married. So congrats to Selena, who's a in that same sort of Gopher year as those two. So a bunch of former Gophers were kind of hanging out destination wedding style.
Nice. Yeah, Matt was missing out. His all his fandom. This show is brought to you, by the way, again by Pentz Homes. Whether you're buying or selling, or if you're looking to do some projects in your current home, Nate and Lydia can help you find what you need. Need financing for a basement remodel, looking at a second bath, or even a workspace? Now that you're working from home, Pentz Homes and their preferred lender, Angie Shearer, with Luminant Financing, can help find the right financing tool for you. Go to pentzhomes.com to learn more, or find them on social media at Pentz Homes. I've been seeing Nate posting houses all over the goddamn place this week. They're getting to work. Follow him. He's got it. And I also met another Luminant financing realtor in the bar who plays a similar role for Ultimate Frisbee. And I was like, I'm just a genuine shill for this real estate company. This is not an ad. I'm actually a fan. Way to go, Angie Shearer and Luminant Financing. Let's talk Bavarian United though, Matt, because this is why you took the train all the way east. They had early results, like it kind of looked like, and they're still in play for playoffs, by the way. But they had early results against kind of the less competitive teams, RKC, Rochester. They drew at Chicago City, which was a good one. Tough losses late, kind of like 2-1 to Dutch Lions, 5-1 to Aurora, which is kind of par for the course, and then 3-0 at Chicago City. So they're in a bit of a dip. They have a chance for playoffs still, but how do you think, they're settling in this first season of W League play?
Yeah, I think, I went down and saw them when they played at Rochester, which I think was both teams' first game. I think it was the first game of the Heartland Division schedule. And I think in that one, Rochester was pretty raw at that point. Players had only gotten in a few days before. And so Rochester players and coaches and staff were sort of letting me know, like, hey, we expected this to be a little bit rough. We only got our players in. Players were sort of telling me directly they also didn't feel like they were necessarily in shape yet because they'd been out of spring season and focusing on finals or whatever. Yeah. And so in that exact setup, the Bavarians actually looked really sharp technically and in their movement and off ball. They started the game so well, and it really gave me the impression that they might be able to challenge some of the other Heartland Division squads just because they were intentional with their movement. They were precise with their movement. They were passing well. They had good build-up play. And that's just the type of thing you don't see all the time in Summer League. You don't see, quality passing, quality build-up, intentional off-ball movement, like quote-unquote soccer being played like the right way or whatever. You don't always see that in a Summer League setup. And since then, I think we've seen them maybe struggle a little bit more on the physical side. Just some of these teams that just are a little bit thinner, I think they wear down a bit. You think about, if Aurora wasn't able to rotate as much as they do, you might see players like Adler and Cat Rapp and, even Wickers and Langdock and all these players maybe tire out a little bit more, but because they rotate, it keeps top players fresh. So I think you see with teams like Bavarian, as the season goes on, more and more of that sort of wear and tear of just general minutes, like loading up. But I am really curious to see if they're able to take advantage of, a few games in a row now Aurora has had, or not in a row, but a few of these last few games, Aurora has really not started as strong as they did early on in the season. And I think the Bavarians seem to be well coached enough by, the Whistlers, and they were prepared in that first game. Maybe you see them also take advantage of that early moment. But I think on the flip side, you'll also see, I'm sure the Aurora coaching staff have been focused on like, hey, can we lock in at the beginning of these games? Like, can we not?
Yeah. Well, it's the balance. It's what comes with the rotation. It's two-sided because it's players, the coaching staff really, they do rotate on the road. And it's kind of the sense of, these players, if you fight and do well, you might get a chance when it's the home game of kind of the first choice lineup, right? So you have players coming in who are motivated, but there's a lot of rotation. So that's when you see Aurora on the road. They don't always look in full chemistry because they're mixing it up so that's the opportunity road teams have. I mean, the one thing about and I'm sure we'll see rotation again today in a game where, or at least the plan for it in the second half, but usually you expect to see it because we're also going to get some tighter and tighter games next week where it's a Thursday is it Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Saturday next week. So those will be really tight in terms of thinking of getting players rested for that. One thing I wanted to spotlight, you mentioned the name of the head coach for Bavarian United. It is probably too rare, although in this division, maybe we've got half of the teams or a few of the teams where we have women coaching. Mary Whistler's the head coach. She's the Purdue University Northwest, so one of a D2 school. That's the same, I don't know if it's the same league, but Danny Foxhoven coached in that area for a Purdue.
No, that I think that's where Danny coached.
It's one of the messier naming conventions. It's the Purdue and like for all those ones. Like they have a really weird system of state schools down there. And then Aluani, all distractions aside, the assistant coach also is Aluani Fernandez, who is the head coach at Chicago State, which people might notice. Definitely someone who plays in our regional teams. We have a couple of Minnesotans who've been there, and then some of those players are in our regional opponent. So that's a cool thing. And actually, our division, Green Bay, is also a team with women coaches, and I guess we're actually maybe standing out in that regard compared to I don't know specifically, but in women's soccer in general, too rare.
Yeah, and those two coaches for Bavarians are also a couple, so they have added layers of adorability. And the Chicago State tie-in, Jessica Poole, the COO who leads the front office for Aurora, is friends with them too. So post game, when Bavarians were at TCO, you saw her down there saying hey to them. So that's kind of a fun tie-in too. But yeah, I think the Heartland division might be somewhat rare in that respect, having at least three of our teams being led by actually sort of all
led and assisted. I mean, it's like that,
right?
Yeah, it's cool. No, there was a very good piece too, I should say, in both like Min Post and Star Tribune have had some kind of like deeper pieces into the team, and one was highlighting the coaching staff, which we try our best also to give full credit, because Aurora is unique where they have such a robust coaching staff and also like really people with high quality skills. And like, so I think people who follow the team are aware of that. But yeah, we reference Coach Lucas. She's the one we get to talk to, but it is like, it's a very unique thing to have four people coaching committed like that on a staff, as well as the trainers, the mental health piece. It's all the resources we talk about. Few games left, mentioned it in passing, but Bavarian, among the struggles, losing 5-1 to Aurora, 3 to Chicago, they're in the playoff hunt. They would still, if they won a couple games, they would pop up to be possible into that spot. But it does look pretty likely that Chicago City, just based on form, they're 4 points up on Dutch Lions, which credit to Dutch Lions for being in the hunt too. They would, if Chicago City dropped out of their standing, Dutch Lions could claim the wild card as well from the Heartland, which is surprising, but they've gotten enough out of it. What do you expect to see? I mean, are you all but Bavarian could play into it, but I mean, Chicago City is going to really look like the team that lost it if they don't claim that spot.
Yeah, City basically has, of their 3 games left, they play Aurora, which is, I believe, the final game of the season for both teams. And before that, Chicago City plays RKC, Third Coast, and Rochester. And so essentially, City controls their own destiny as long as they win. I believe as long as they win both of those games.
Although we'll say this, Rochester just beat Chicago City for their first win. Credit to the Loons, man. That was long overdue. But I mean, so that's the other game. That'll be a huge game if Rochester takes the double over City and gives the Dutch Lions a chance.
Yeah, and the Dutch Lions do have a chance. I mean, all their remaining games are winnable, and they have those 3 remaining. So I mean, it's very possible. It's still wide open. It's worth noting that either way, I think the points per game are looking like the Heartland will get that wild card spot, just the way the Great Lakes points have gone.
They'd have to lose every game, like it wouldn't. Even then, I don't know. Yeah.
So that should make for a fun playoffs. This, that opening cluster. If people haven't been following, the playoffs are set up where it's sort of a 4-team cluster, where it's all in one site, and that opening cluster will involve 2 Heartland Division teams. So it adds a little bit of fun, added flavor for Aurora fans. And I think we mentioned this. I think folks probably appreciate this given the record and the points and all these things, but Aurora did officially, they are officially in the playoffs. So they've clinched that. I think a win today, they would clinch the division. So
Right.
At least I believe so. And so that would also give the coaching staff a little bit more flexibility. Not that there's a ton of uncertainty, but it would give them more flexibility heading into those last two games with Green Bay and then back home against City.
Yeah. No, I mean, by the way the coaching staff rotates already, absolutely, I'm sure, in the last couple games. And that also would make it interesting for who's playing for the wild card because, I mean, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if Aurora rotates, they usually win, but they will – I'm sure they'll rotate. I bet she might even rotate, she might give Bayless a play in the last game or something like that. So you never know. What can you tell us about the game day itself today? It's in it must be a suburb of Milwaukee, right? And you're playing – I don't know what can you tell us about the stadium, about what to expect for the game itself?
I believe it's in Milwaukee proper, but it's in the north part. It's a few miles north of where we're staying. We're staying, near where the river goes through, near like Lakefront Brewing, if people know where that is. And so it's about a few miles north of us, maybe 5 miles north of us. It's at their sort of historic brew hall. So I'll make sure I get there early and post some pics and videos where, Bavarians is one of the most historic soccer clubs, I guess, in the country, certainly in the upper Midwest. So they've had that sort of cool brew hall there along with the soccer field. So excited to see it. I don't believe there's a stream. I'm working to sort of triple confirm that. I don't believe there will be one. So equal time live tweets might be the only thing we get there, but it should be a fun one for sure. I think what you mentioned about the coaching staff, just to triple down on that, I think there's a lot of attention the club gets for the resources it puts into things. It gets a lot of attention for having those sellout crowds, for having a good, a lot of cool merch, like really cool broadcast. I think the success of the team on the field, we obviously say it pretty frequently. You said there was some good coverage of it. I really don't think it can be overstated, the quality of coaching that the team gets. I think on paper, if someone had never followed any of these teams before and knew nothing about summer league soccer, both of the Chicago teams, I guess theoretically, you could argue have equal or better talent, quote unquote, on paper. They have a lot of Power 5 players. They have a lot of, a lot of pedigree from that like Chicagoland area. And even some of these other teams like Bavarians and others have, players from pretty solid programs. I do think it is worth calling out pretty directly, just the quality of the coaching and the preparation that goes in for this squad, just because I think there's a reason you see them able to battle back after going down. There's a reason even when they rotate a lot, they're able to compete at the high level, and it just goes to the level of sort of mental preparation and tactical preparation that coaches put these players through. I also think it is kind of worth noting that they do just sort of train more than other teams.
Of course, they do.
And that was a big part of Nicole's focus coming in, was that they were always going to have, even if it's a low intensity workout, there just are very regular training sessions and team meetings and times they're spending together just to build chemistry, to build trust, to build relationships. And so I think even if it doesn't mean they're doing, 3 a days, they're doing killers, all day long and doing hardcore physical stuff. They're spending a lot of time together, they're building chemistry. And it is a, you mentioned it's the whole coaching staff. Nicole Lukic as the head coach, Jenny Clark, Jen Larrick, Cassie Ulrich, and then obviously all the other folks who play supporting roles. So it is impressive what they're able to do. I think it'll be really interesting to see what these playoffs are like, because it might be new matchups. It might be teams they've never faced before. So that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, in the first rounds, it'll be some pairing of, it looks inevitable, of Indy 11 and then Flint City, and then probably Aurora, Aurora for sure, one of them, and then whoever else, Chicago City or whoever else plays into it. But yeah, it is. When we get into the playoffs, it'll be fun, because if Aurora is matching up against, say, when you get to the coastal teams, but even Indy and other teams, you're like we have some people from. Faulkner played at UCLA. Purva is not yet a standout, but plays at Penn State. But the best players for Aurora play at South Dakota State, Utah State, South Dakota, and they're undefeated. So it's like it's a good rep for Utah State is not. There's some of our best players, and it's who you get from those teams. Are they the best players on the team? But it's still pretty cool when they face.
Well, and like there was a tweet I did. Not even all the Summit League players played in this game, and there was a game where like four of
Adler's from Denver, baby. She's not from the Pac-10.
If the Summit League isn't watching Aurora and like making a literal soccer commercial, like it's I mean it's Mariah Wynn and Olivia Groutman from St. Thomas. And by the way, Emma Fournier is a training player who's from St. Thomas. Hannah Adler, a Denver grad, Abby Ostrom, a South Dakota grad, Maya Hansen, like you mentioned last year, Rachel Preston from South Dakota State. There's so many. I'm forgetting some, but it's it's just it's fantastic, and and there's a reason. Obviously the Summit League is drowning in Minnesotans, and that's why we cover them so much. But it's a fun conference, and it's also there's just a ton of them in the Midwest, so it's fun to follow.
Yeah, and also just for people, we'll about wrapping up here, but I will say to give to people there was some news that Jenny Vetter, who's a Mankato legend, hyper local, Mankato United, Minnesota State, Mankato WPSL. She signed a deal in Portugal, so we're going to have her on Monday. That's so cool. Rare thing for a D2 player to go out and be pro. And so very cool. We'll get to talk to Jenny, and then I'll also be on the ground tomorrow in Mankato as they play the Fury, I think. I don't know what. There's too many games. Yeah. They played also, I'll say this, the Highway 14 trophy. It's a cool thing for teams to create culture this way. And Southern Minnesota is kind of deep. Both in the men's, it's more UPSL teams, but in women, there's a lot of teams down there. And they created in the WPSL, Rochester United playing Mankato, the Highway 14 trophy. It's full ball. Like I want to see how heavy it is. But Rochester has it, so we'll have to visit them to see it. But credit will be all in Mankato content the next couple days. So credit to them, and Matt, keep tuned for all the highlights. It might be all you get. If a stream comes up, we'll throw it on at the Blackheart as well, but maybe just equal time today. Thanks, Matt. Good job with the train point.